Welcome back, guys and girls, to another episode of Dad's Toy Garage, and we are working on Project Judith Ann today, my 1973 Toyota Celica, and the plan is to get it on the wheels. You can see it's on the wheels here, so that means I get to use all those fun suspension parts that I have bought for the car, the coilovers, the bushings, and stuff like that, and I'm excited to get this thing on the wheels. It's been a long journey to get to this point. A whole winter's worth of body work on here. I think last fall we sent the shell away to get sandblasted, and it all started from there with this part of the job. And so I'm guessing this kind of starts a new chapter of the build in a sense. So let's have some fun with this build, and let's do this. Hey guys, it's time to unmask the underside of this car because we're getting suspension on here shortly, and I can't do it with plastic in the way, so let's get to that. In preparation for doing the suspension, I've got all my parts laid out. So the bushings, and these are front control arm and bearings, the hubs, brake parts over there, more brake parts, and then these are sway bar stuff. We probably won't get into that because I didn't buy the sway bar bushings yet. And then over here, engine cradle with the bolts laid out there. I've laid it out by the parts that are needed, and the brake shields, and the front coilovers, and the bolts there. Got some spring parts, and my steering rack adapter, and the steering rack for the it's an MR2 rack, and the front control arms, and the rear control arms and its bolts, and then the tension rods here with its bolts, and I think you call those knuckles or the steering arms. So all those parts, they got to go into this car over here, and that will open up a lot of shelving space. I'm kind of looking forward to getting parts off the shelf and getting the car back onto the ground. So I'm just working on my rear control arms. They actually fit really easy, the white line bushings. They just pop right in. And reading instructions says you don't grease the fitted surfaces like in here. So that works pretty good. I think the greasing needs to happen inside here once we put the metal sleeve in. I'm going to check into that a little bit. So I can get all the bushings in urethane from Whiteline except for the front control arms. Those I got from Prothane. Looks like they're for a Corolla, but I'm going to try and run those in here. That's what Summit sold me for my car. That should stiffen up that front end a little bit. So if you do these control arms at home, they don't just fit right in there if you push the metal and rubber bushing out. I was going through the instructions, and it says you need to keep the metal sleeve and get rid of the rubber and just leave the sleeve in there. So that is my first little oopsie, I guess, but I'm going to probably press these out of here and just stick them in the ones that I painted because I don't want rusty looking parts on the car. Well, I got some extra help on Judith Ann today. I got Tony here.
Hey, to get my hand.
Yeah, hammers the hand a little bit, gets bushings in for me. Got the front engine cradle done here. Installed. Feels really good putting rusty bolts on a new car. That piece is done. Now we can bolt those parts into there. And Tony's just installing the coilover strut. Tony and I got a lot done today. Coilovers are in, and all the brakes are rebuilt. It's kind of something I haven't done before, is this style brake, because there's no caliper pistons, so that was definitely a unique situation, but it's looking pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. And this side's done as well. I think eventually we'll get bed liner or something in there, but for now this is good. It is protected. I'll probably come back and do that at another point, but let's see if we can roll the car over and you guys can get an upside down look. So I don't have a lot of space to back up to show you guys. There's significantly more weight to rolling the car over with all the suspension parts on, but got the lower control arms in for the front, and you can see polyurethane bushings are in there, and I've got the urethane bushings from Whiteline in the front for both sides. So the tension rods there. These were actually Por 15. Side note, if you get these, paint Por 15 on these, they do not thread on. You got to buy expensive tap for that. That's what we did. Brake shields are powder coated, and this is Por 15. That's powder coated, this one and that one. So yeah, let's step back a bit. Maybe we can get a better view on this. There's the front end of the car. The rack adapters from a guy named Kerry. I found him on the forums. I think you'd find him on the Facebook First Gen Celica groups. He's on there. I think he's got a pretty cool drag Celica with a 2JZ or a 1JZ. I can't remember exactly at this point, but he made that for me. He'll do a full engine cradle and get rid of this. It's a tubular setup, but for my purpose, not being a race car, I didn't need it, but I did want the MR2 manual rack. So it's dusty from sitting in the shop, sanding dust. It'll clean up real nice, kind of like similar to the steering rack adapter. And maybe some people might want to see kind of how Kerry's rack adapter hooks up. It uses the original steering box, because this car was a Japanese car. You could run the box on either side, and I think the side that didn't have the box was a bracket for the linkage, but it uses those 3 holes, and then on both sides they mount like that with a plate, and they tie into the lower control arm here, and then it solid mounts the steering rack. And you can use like A86 manual rack. I have an MR2 rack because those A86 manual racks are getting harder to find. MR2s are more plentiful in this area, I guess. And I got, I think, MR2 inner rods. I'd have to look at my spec sheet that I'm making, but the outers are actually cut down and remachined threads in. They're, I think, Corolla or Camry or Terracell. They either way, they all work, but some just have to be machined, I guess. But yeah, that's the underside. Last batch of bushings came in today. That means we can install the control arms. And just so you know, when you order this kit here, W61182, that only does half your control arms, either the uppers or the lowers, or one side or the other. Whereas everything else will get you all the parts for both sides. So that caught me off guard. So if you don't want to set back and you want to put these bushings in, make sure you order 2 of these. And we're gonna get it back on the rear wheels as a hope today. So we'll start with that now. So for example, inside the kit, you get these 8 bushing halves, which each equal one side of the control arm, plus these inserts, and they're just going to slide in there. And then it gives you other inserts. I'm guessing if you're running a smaller bolt, maybe for a different car. Let's see if the bag says what car it's for. No, it does not. But I'm guessing maybe if you run it on a Corolla, it will have a different size, but probably share bushings, for example. And then you get the grease. And I'm finding that it's not always enough, so I actually end up using a little bit of dielectric grease is what we were using. That's Tony's recommendation. So we'll get those popped in there. So as far as the grease, when the sleeves are out, I grease them up and then I slide it down the hole, and I'm gonna do grease on all the faces. That's how I understand the instructions to go. And then I'll take anti-seize on the inside of the bolt, what's going to go inside there, this stuff here. And the reason I'm doing anti-seize is because when I went to take them out of here, I actually had to go buy new bolts now because they were rusted to the inner sleeve. on the axle here, and it was wanting to bend tabs, so I had to literally cut them out. They were so rusted in there was no getting them off. So that should help prevent that type of situation happening for many years. I ordered this the other day and it has been super helpful. It's actually original printing Celica repair manual, service manual. So I'm in the rear end section here, and it gives you a bit of a visual here of what it's going to look like. For those of you who don't know what the Celica looks like, it's very similar to a late model Mustang rear end before they became IRS, especially the S197 and previous. So that would be, what years were those? Well, there's my old car. It'll be very much like that in the previous generation. But yeah, so then we get into here and it shows exactly where all the nuts and bolts go, which side they go in, and it'll give us the torque specs here, which is perfect. That means I tend to over tighten things. That'll help not do that. That's in. I'm gonna leave these loose, and I'll put the middle ones in yet, and then we'll roll the axle under here and be able to lower it onto the axle. I got all the control arms in there, so now we're gonna try and get the axle over this hump and drop the car down onto it. So you can see here, this is kind of how I lower it. Well, the bolt and chain there running through the top post, and I just sort of let it drop slowly. I've got her lowered with the springs in there. Suspension's almost all hooked up. The front will have to put some blocks under to slide those out, but same idea. Chain hooks in here and you just slowly let it down with the engine hoist. So it's pretty close to ground level, and I forgot how low the car sits, even on factory ride height. So the rotisserie is all broken down. Each stand was bought at a different point. So you got to kind of keep them grouped together, but those are all the parts of it. And a big thank you to my friend who lent this to me. I'll keep his name quiet because I haven't asked for if he's okay with it on YouTube, but a big thank you to you, and it's helped me bundles, and thank you very much. Well, guys and girls, here's Judith off of the stands, and sure is smaller than I remember. It's kind of interesting how you pull the stand off of there and right away the car feels smaller, and when it hits the ground it feels lower. Sometimes the right tool is not what you would expect. We're working here on the spoiler. That's exactly what I'm going to use again now that we've primed it. I did the first time. My Sun Life Financial pen. But I think this is the first time I dropped a part off my stand, which sucks because it's fiberglass, and I managed to crack it. Yeah, you can see it right there. It landed on this piece of metal, and there's the crack. It kind of hides itself, and so I gotta actually open this up again, grind it, and fill that. It sucks a little bit, but I guess it's just something I gotta deal with. Spoiler is done. I've sanded it in 220 grit. I'm gonna have to prime it one more time, but here's the repair I did. The crack that went from here to here because, well, I dropped it. I'll have to prime that again, and we'll sand it one more time in the key areas, and then we'll go to wet sand that part, but I think that'll be good enough. The wave that I seen there, I think I've got out now. It feels really good. Yeah, I'm happy with that. And that'll go on the front of here. Thanks, guys and girls, for joining me for another episode of Dad's Toy Garage, working on Project Judith Ann. And I'm really excited. This car's on the wheels. It's been something I've been waiting for a while. It's such a relief, I guess. It feels like I've made a big leap at this point. If you guys enjoy what I'm doing, feel free to subscribe or hit the bell notification. But other than that, we'll be back on here next time. I'm not sure exactly what we'll be doing, but there'll be things we'll be tackling. I know we got to get the wheels sent away at some point, get them cleaned up, and maybe start on those. Every other Tuesday I bring out a new video. It's kind of what I've been aiming for lately. Until next time, we'll talk to you later. Stay safe out there.